Smells like football, baby.
What's up, people? Welcome into the Fantasy Football Smackdown. It's Thursday night. No Thursday night football once again as we are heading into week 18 and the fantasy season has concluded, I hope, for most of you, as I have been enjoying not having to pay attention to all the COVID and injury news for this final week and, of course, players resting. But tonight's show, we're going to be talking about some fantasy football resolutions for 2022 and beyond. And I got a great guest on the podcast tonight. He runs a couple of leagues I'm in, and they're very entertaining. They're all local live drafts. So I like bringing this guy on from time to time, especially to talk about commish stuff. It's John McGlynn. How's it going, John?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on here. I love you. You're a great teammate. You got to run a great show here. I'm John McGlynn at John McGlynn 75. Super easy to remember on the Twitter machine. I do a commissioner evaluation show once a week on the Nick Script a P2W network. So if you ever get a chance, Nick's got some great stuff going on there. He lets me use his airwaves every week to babble about commissioner stuff. And I got a couple commissioner answers here this week to kind of help some people out or be open, broaden horizons. But I'm here with my guy Kyle, so let's run the show.
Yeah, man, it's been fun. And John and I actually connected via Twitter a few years back, interacted on there. And John's big thing is in-person drafts. And so when he hit me up a couple of years back, had to jump in on that, did a dynasty startup, a couple rookie drafts, obviously, since then. They are a ton of fun, a lot of different caveats to them as well that I think all commissioners and dynasty players can take away from. And now I'm in 2 leagues with him because he conned me into another one this last offseason for another startup. Again, couldn't pass it up. So good stuff as always. So looking forward to chatting with you. Again, check out P2W Network there. You'll find John's content over there. And, of course, check him out on Twitter at John McGlynn 75. But also, I want to preface this. John is the man. He's toughing us out through work. So he's got the work Wi-Fi to work with there. So if he cuts out here and there, bear with us a bit, but I think this is going to be a great show. Before we get too far into it though, John, how did your fantasy season end up as far as 2021? What was the good news?
I think I've heard the same sentiment from a lot of people that some of their best teams didn't go very far in the playoffs because of COVID or injuries or, things that happened. And some of the teams that people had nobody playing in, or like they reach for Braxton Berrios in the last week or two, and he scored 30-some points or 25 points in the last week of the season. Like people got lucky on the waiver wire, Daria Gumwale, and the people that usually have on your waiver wire won people fantasy football championships this week. So this year. It was a weird year, this COVID year. I think in a year or two, when it goes to 19 games and 2 byes and COVID situations and everything, this is only going to get harder and harder to navigate through. So I think people learn through these that depth is the situation. So if you have a 12-team league with, 20 spots, or if you have a 12-team, if you have a 12, make it 30 spots. Try to make it 35 spots. If you possibly can. Sometimes the league gets a little bit stagnant because some people don't trade, but if you have that much space in your team, you could just you could make your team to where you want it, where you have all the guys that you speculate may have an opportunity. The backup running backs, the backup quarterbacks, all the COVID situations that you could prevent yourself from getting trapped in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, between Berrios and Dare and Justin Jackson the week before, I know I got chastised by somebody that I ended up beating him in the semifinals because I picked up Justin Jackson in a dynasty league that week when Eckler went down, and he had been on my opponent's roster for years, and he dropped him like a couple weeks before that. So it was just crazy, all of the names that were relevant that you would have never ever in a million years expected. You could, I guess, like maybe Rashad Penny, like, okay, he was on a roster at least, but I mean, some of these guys, God, it was unbelievable, the names that we were talking about. And like you said, the names that people were picking up, even in dynasty leagues, like it wasn't just redraft league. Like I picked up this guy, who's, and he's 30% owned. Like we're talking about guys that were available that were, not owned anywhere. And then they were fantasy relevant in week 17. It's just crazy.
Absolutely not so. But You live and you learn.
Yeah, I think there's some things I think people will be interested in too. Like I think, as we get through this, how adjusting it for the longer season, and like you said, for some of this stuff, depth I think is always going to be key. So I'm interested to see how next year works out as well. Unfortunately, I think with our first taste of the extended season, with COVID hitting so hard exactly in those key times, just just crazy how that all came to a head. But anyway, well, so let's get this conversation started. Before we're gonna end it with the resolutions, right? So the things we want to give a solid shot for in 2022 and beyond. But let's take a quick kind of look back a little bit, for the good and the bad, from strategies or commissioner ideas or philosophies that we've used, that we like, or maybe we don't like. So let's start with the good though. So John, I'll kick it to you first, and we'll kind of go back and forth on this. I know I got a couple of these, but what was the good? What are some strategies or commissioner ideas that you used either in 2021 or beyond or before that you want to keep, that for sure, like, okay, 2021 solidify that this is a good idea, this is a good strategy, this is a good commish take here?
I got a couple of them. I'll start out with the first strategy I used. It was a week one divisional play all game. Now, you may not be in leagues with divisions, so this may not pertain to you, but all of my leagues had divisions, But for competitive home leagues, a divisional play all was a great idea. It also doubled as a third head-to-head game that counted for tiebreakers in their interdivision play. So it was a great way to make, to expand the expanded schedule. And it made it work that way for our leagues, and it was a little extra work for me as a commissioner, but it was really worth it in the long run to have that third game that decided head-to-head and division games, interdivision in a home league, which people, it adds a little bit of smack elements for guys playing in home leagues. So that was one of the goods that I had. How about yourself?
Yeah, and I was in a league. I was in two leagues that you commissioned. You used that, and I thought that was definitely an interesting way to figure that out, because with the extended game, I think the NFL didn't give the fantasy commissioners really a choice, because putting bye weeks in week 14, I don't really think you could play the first round of your playoffs in week 14. I felt like, so I thought using the all play was interesting. Before I get to my first one, real quick, just for the commissioners out there, because you figured it out eventually, like you figured it out, but how were you able to manually adjust the records on Sleeper? Like, how did you get the ties in there? So like
what I had to do was I took all the teams that I had to make a win, loss, and tie for each division. So there was four divisions with 3 players apiece. So I had to make a win, loss, and tie. And what I had to do was manipulate 2 scores so that I had 4 ties, across the board. So after you can't do it on the Sleeper app on your phone. You had to go on the Sleeper website, which all my leagues are run through Sleeper. You got to go to the Sleeper website and manipulate the schedule first of all, and then the score, so that you had a tie, a tie, a tie, a tie in each division. So that you had, out of the 3 teams, whoever scored the highest got a win. Whoever scored, the middle got a tie, and whoever scored the lowest out of the 3 teams, obviously all 3 of them can't play head to head, so you had to manipulate it, and somebody got a loss. So the tie ended up, which was such a great idea for me, but the tie ended up what was really kind of ousted me out of one of my home leagues. So I was 1/2 game away from, with my best team by far. I was
Yeah.
1/2 game away from getting a division win and a bye, and pretty much walking to the ship with money. It was a great idea. It sounded like a great idea until it bit me in the butt on the way out. So, but it was fair. It worked
Yeah.
out great, and that's. I mean, if you have a chance, if you're a commissioner, I always have to. I make my division games the first 3 weeks of the season and the last 2 weeks of the season. So I manipulate the entire schedule in every league I run. It's a bit of a pain in the butt, but it's fun to do. And you shouldn't be playing like the NFL has sometimes week 15, 16. And you're playing, the Packers are playing the Vikings, and the Bears are playing the Lions like 2 weeks in a row. Like, you should
Yeah.
never have division games that close to each other. It should always be the beginning of the season and the end of the season, for injury wise, for bye weeks, for anything like that. So I like to manipulate it so it's a completely fair. Both teams are full steam ahead, ready to go. And if somebody has injuries at the beginning of the season, the guys like the DeAndre Swifts are back, or they started out with DeAndre Swift, they don't have him at the end of the year, even though he came back and didn't do anything. But it just makes it. I think it just makes it more fair when you're playing week 1 to 3 and 11 to 12, 13, 14.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know I appreciated it as someone just in a league that you put the effort, figured it out. And then we didn't have the question like all year, like, oh, wait, what was that one all play? So I think that's for you commissioners out there, or even you avid dynasty players, you can talk to your commissioner about doing that. And that was a great way to start the season off. It was fun. I have a little bonus thing as one of my resolutions for this upcoming season. I want to get to here at the end. That's kind of similar, tied to that as well. So that was good. Uh, my first one, as far as the good went for 2021 specifically, I heading into the season, one of the things that I kind of realized about my own self in Dynasty is that I definitely like going for it. Right, I want to win the damn thing. I don't want to just finish, third or fourth. I want to really go for it. But the problem to my Dynasty game truly was that I wasn't always realistic about that and really being intentional about the decision of like, all right, you don't have a shot. So start planning ahead, which can seem like fairly simple and basic. And, maybe I'm just not a strong dynasty player from that side of it, but I noticed that was a weakness to my game. And then in the leagues where I was clearly out of it, right? And I think this is almost a little easier to do sometimes than going for it. But I went into every league that I felt like I just did not have a chance to win. Even if early on, like, I'm okay, I'm in the playoff hunt, it didn't matter, right? I knew that I couldn't beat the top teams in there. I started to take a look at the teams that were near the top, that were maybe a piece or two away, and trying to get, sell off a piece that, like, hey, this isn't going to help me until, isn't going to help me next year because I'm still not going to be a competitive team yet. So what can I do? Like Cordero Patterson was one of those players. I think I sold him in like 3 or 4 dynasty leagues that I just knew I wasn't really going to be competitive in. I could easily flip him to a contender for, he didn't have to pay much. I got a little extra, but I knew that was a part of my game that I wasn't very strong at. And I felt that when I look at it, my teams now and the teams that didn't win championships, I'm like, okay, I'm way better off now than than what I would have been in the past
Yeah.
when I was trading for veterans,
You sold me Ronald Jones and Zach Ertz on the playoff run, and I mean, that was absolutely humongous. I think you got a 206 or a 208 out of it or something like that. But
Yep.
for me, those two players were humongous for my playoff run. I lost the championship by 5 points to Buddha, but it is what it is. Those players, I wouldn't have got there without those two players.
Mhm.
And you got a second round pick on a rebuild team, a mid second round pick on a rebuild team. So
Yep.
that's Zach Ertz is 30 years old. Ronald Jones may not, everybody says he's going to get his chance next year, but who knows? I mean,
Mhm.
just because he's a first round pick and he's, he should pan out somewhere doesn't mean he's going to. But I'm in win now. You're in rebuild. Hey, it was a great pairing.
Yeah, and I think those are easy to find win-win scenarios, right? Like I think people get caught up like I want to win the trade. Like when you find good pairings like that, a contender and non-contender, it's easy. Those are easy trade discussions I think to have a
Yes.
lot of the time. So we got it
Especially
done.
when you got somebody by the short and curlies in there, you pretty much ask whatever you want for him. Yes.
I mean, you're walking away with some money, so I mean that's not a bad thing to have, and almost got it. I was pulling for you.
Thank you.
It's
Thank you.
also easier to pull for the guy to win when the pick that I got wasn't yours. If I got yours, I'm like, oh, that's gonna be the 212, right? But like because it was somebody else's, I'm like, you go get him, man. Like, so that was fun. But what else you got in the good?
For the good. We have a division draft every year. As we know, we have
Hmm.
4 divisions with 3 teams each. The worst of division winners, which is the 4th seed, picks first in the snake type draft, and the best division winner, which is number 1 seed, picks 4th, 5th, and 12th. It's a great way to shake up the divisions, and also it really adds a little smack to the league when people get to pick the worst team first in the divisional draft. The worst place team really gets to relive the embarrassment of being the most terrible team in the whole league every season. So it's just another. Usually we get together, as you know, every year we do our first get together will be a lottery, our rookie lottery. Everybody gets the picks 1 to 6 have so many balls in a rookie lottery. We talk about any rule changes, and then we do a divisional draft at our first of 2 home league meetings. The second one's actually the rookie draft, and the person who wins the loser bracket gets to pick the rules division draft and rules meeting and lottery location. Whoever wins the draft gets to pick the location for the actual draft itself, the rookie draft itself. So um, the division draft is just a certain element that really kind of adds a little bit of a little bit of spunk to the league.
Yeah.
What do you think about the division draft?
Dude, I never heard of that before, and I've been in leagues with divisions and in the past before being in leagues with you, and I was always like, "Who? I don't care about divisions. Like, that doesn't really matter." But then when I was in your leagues, like the way you did it was really good, and the division draft was definitely something I stole. I was in another league where we've used divisions, and it had been fun just because it was a very active league. So like you kind of have that smack talk of like, I'm facing my division, opponent, and but yes, the division draft was awesome. I threw it out there at like the last minute. We were about to do our rookie draft, and I was like, "Hey, I think we should mix up divisions, and I have the best way to do it." And we did we drafted the teams for the divisions, and of course, the team that was picked as the first team that drafted whipped right around like "F you," like
Yeah.
so it was awesome. But yeah, I highly, highly recommended the divisions and in that manner as well, getting the divisions draft, mixing it up a little bit. Mike's in the chat, and Mike's very big time listener here. We love Mike chiming in with comments and stuff. So he says, I'm wanting to add a lottery to
I can
rookie
explain
drafts.
this one.
What's the best way? Go for it.
Yeah, Mike. What I did is I went out to this. I went to the Five Below, and I bought a lottery ball machine for less than $5, and there it is. Yes,
I just
exactly
I just
like
had
mine.
one last night. So I just had a lottery last night. So
So the teams, what we do is by max potential points. So not just your points you got for the season, your max potential points. So that means the absolute worst team in the league gets like 42 balls. And then the second worst team gets like 25. The third team gets like 15, 12, 10, 5-ish, and you put a lottery machine. And we had a situation where people traded as much as they possibly can. Like Scott Sidlow, he traded up 2 years ago, and he's like, "This is great. I got like 72 of the 96 balls that are going to be doing. I'm getting a first, second, third round pick." And out of the 6 picks, he ended up getting 4, 5, and 6. So he didn't get 1, 2, or 3. No, he was at the he got to pick the location. It was him or Steven Johnson got to pick the location, but they were both there, and they're both. Scott's like, "Son of a, this is crap. I traded my whole team away for these to try to get 1, 2, and 3, and he got 4, 5, and 6. He was so pissed, but it stops tanking, like 100% tanking.
Mhm.
It leaves an element of no matter what you do, you're not guaranteed a first round pick, and it's fun. Why just get another reason to get together and just have a couple beers and make fun of each other. It's just
Yeah.
The draft rookie lottery is just something everybody should have in their leagues, I think.
I agree, and I think that you still, and like John mentioned, to kind of just reiterate too, like it's not that everyone has equal chance. If you finish last, you still have the most chance, but you're not guaranteed that pick. So it makes it interesting. The one that I did last night, which is why I had that cage readily available there with the bingo cage. Did one last night over Zoom. I mean, this is a league we're not even like none of us even live together, but we were, because of COVID, everyone got real familiar with Zoom and jumping on calls like that. So obviously, as John and I would both recommend, getting your in-person drafts, local leagues are the best. That's where you're looking at. But even for the ones that aren't, I highly recommend stuff like that to keep everybody kind of connected. But we did one last night, and the guy that had the most, he was 12th place, so he had the most percentage chance to get the 101. He ended up getting the 106, and he wasn't thrilled. So it was really, really funny. But I would highly recommend that. Because I think the main thing, addition to all the fun, is that the tanking thing can really stink. Like that's the tough part about Dynasty. And you run your team how you want to run it. I get it. But I think it just takes away that little like bit of just guaranteed, right? Like, oh, if I suck the most, then I get the 101, but it's like, maybe not, so it's always kind of in the back of your mind a little bit. And it just, adds a little bit layer of fun. And
You
I
got to
think,
plan for the future a little bit more. Like even though
yeah.
you are bad, you
Mhm.
have to acquire a bunch of draft picks first of all. And second of all, you have to have young players that maybe don't score much, but you can see a couple years down the future like having a role.
Mhm.
So it's you can't just I'm going to throw everything away and just run to the garbage bin and just grab stuff. You have to have some kind of plan for the future on top of just grabbing all draft picks.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. And any way like you can create these events, right? Like in your league calendar. Like John does a great job that he's talking about it. We meet to do the lottery and the division draft and then the rookie draft. And those are great things to do because it just keeps everybody connected. And not everyone can make it every single time, but a
Right.
lot of people, make it out, and you get to know everybody better as opposed to just, oh, yeah, that's that one a-hole that beat me on waivers last week. Okay, nameless, faceless guy, So
Yes.
it's always a lot of fun. But this is turning very commissioner centric, because my another thing that I had that was kind of commish uh, uh, spawn from that is of the good is this year I'm in a league that the commissioner of that league, this is like the 4th year, and he started doing these recap videos every week. Now you hear about leagues that do like a full podcast and all that stuff, and I was always just like trying to figure out ways to get my league more invested. And I used to like type up like articles every week, like going through matchups and trying to keep track of like, oh, these guys are 3 and 4 against each other like all time and like all this stuff. It was a lot of work, but my buddy was doing this league and he was doing these weekly videos. So I challenged myself as the commissioner of Too Many Damn Leagues to do these recap videos every week. So I just, and since I podcast a little easier, but it was not very difficult. So all I did was I just I just created an account, recorded these short 3-minute videos every week, just going kind of taking a look at the matchups. I just highlight like the best scoring team, the worst team of the week, the shit of the week, I always call them. Like those close games that were super close, kind of highlighting like, oh, if you would have done this, that would have, changed this matchup maybe. And then that's a good way too to communicate like, hey, either, and depending on your league, trade deadlines are coming up, or this is due by this time, or what have you. So it was fun. It was a little time consuming because I just have too many damn leagues that commission, but I got a lot of good feedback on that. And I think it's like anything, you have to kind of make sure that you're not extending yourself too far. But it was, I got a lot of people that were like, man, that really made this a lot more fun, especially leagues that like, it was kind of like not everyone knew each other yet. You kind of got to know each other a bit because, like, oh yeah, you always get ragged on, for this or what have you. So that was one thing I did, and I'm going to try to keep doing it next year. But I would recommend, if you're just a commissioner of like a league or two, try to figure out something cool like that where you can kind of recap things and keep people a little bit more invested than just the, maybe auto-generated reports.
I'm going to try that. I've always wanted to do that. I'm not a very computer-friendly kind of person, but I'm sure it's just a couple clicks, and everything sounds much harder than it really is. Usually, as soon as you figure out, it takes all you do is press record and talk for 10 seconds and press, copy and paste. It's not really that bad.
Yeah. Vimeo was what I used. And like, that was pretty simple. Once I got an account set up, it has a plugin. So like literally I just click it. I can hit start record, hit stop, and it gives me a link, and I just pasted it right in the league chat. And awesome. It was,
you'll have to show me that.
Yeah, I will. I'll definitely help you out there. It was a lot of fun. And it definitely just changed the way the league was, as opposed to like, because not everyone can get it together all the time. So at least it gave me a chance to maybe, call cool things out, or if I saw things, or, oh, that trade, did you guys see that this week and all that stuff. So it was fun. So
I got one more for the good.
Yeah,
just
do it.
Just after you've been in the league with people for 2 or 3 years, I know everybody's kind of worried about, having problems with trading draft picks. So make every pick available. If you're an established league with people and you have guys, how Sleeper only has like 3 years ahead, or MFL has 4 years or 5 years ahead, make all those picks available. If you know all the people aren't leaving and you've got an established league, let the picks be available for 3 or 4 years down the road.
Mhm.
This is more fun for established leagues, so deals can be done and teams can decide to go into full rebuild mode. They can really set themselves up for many years going forward. As most people, they don't have the vision to to appreciate 2 or 3 years down the road for picks sometimes, but some people do. And you're handcuffing those people who have a decent team, who want, like 2023 picks are starting to be considered gold in the fantasy football community by all the Twitter darlings. But some leagues only are able to pick this year's picks, or maybe one more year's picks. When you're handcuffing someone that they can't rebuild in a 2023 year or a 2024 year, don't do that. On the league you just started, you got to be careful. You don't know who's coming and who's going, who just wants to kind of get to dabble in dynasty a little bit and win and leave. But after you've been together for about 2 years, maybe at the beginning of the third year, say like, hey, listen, let's start including all the picks so that teams who are really kind of see the future can rebuild. We just did that in one of our leagues this year, and it probably happened in most of mine. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely. For me, I saw it. There was one league I didn't even realize it was the case until this year, but like the only picks that were available to trade were next year's picks. So like I was a contending team. And I had some holes, like a lot of people due to injury and stuff down the stretch, and I didn't really have a lot of room to do much. Like I sifted through that, and I was like, okay, I guess this is all I have, So I definitely don't mind going at least 2 years as kind of the standard for me. At least 3 is solid. Like you said, I think your league has to be established, or if you're still not sure, if you're a little hesitant, it is a little bit extra work, so you got to figure out the logistics on it. But I've been in leagues where if you trade like a first or second round pick, you have to put your deposit down for that year. And that way, like if that team bailed for whatever reason, it's like written in the rules that like if you don't have picks for that year and you leave, you don't get that deposit back, because the new owner coming in will play for free pretty much, because they got to sit there with your shit pile that you may have left behind. So
Yeah.
That's tough. It truly is. Like as a commissioner, that's really tough. You got to figure out I'm in some leagues where like they always collect a year in advance every single time to protect that too. And it's written in like, hey, if you leave, you're not going to get it back if you sold off those assets. So, but
Right.
I definitely 2 years has got to be the minimum. And I like 3 personally. And like you said, go beyond if you feel like if everybody's comfortable. I don't think there's anything wrong with that either. So
If it was 3, I wouldn't have any 3 years ahead of me picks either. So
yeah, that's you and I unfortunately have a very similar strategy a lot of times when it comes to picks. So whenever we're trying to make a deal, I'm always just like, oh, you want this pick? And you're like, I don't give a shit about those picks. I'm like,
right.
yeah, me neither. So it's always fun when we get some deals done and we can overcome that. So all right, let's move on to the bad. I think sometimes it's good to take a look at the bad things sometimes too, to just say like, I'm not doing that anymore. Whether it be a strategy or maybe it's a commission thing as well, since we've had a lot of good insights there. So I'll kick this off to you to start. What was something, either a strategy or a commissioner related item, that after this season you're like, you know what, enough's enough of that?
So this may be it would seem like a great idea for about one season, but we're in a bunch of leagues with people. I think all of us have been in leagues with people before that you kind of just throw the anchor out after a while. They don't care, In one of my leagues, we decided to make a rule to boot the team with the least amount of points for the conclusion of the season. Just points for, not max points for. So I don't care how bad your team is, but if you this is just something that we wanted to experiment with, because everyone has been in a league with the owner that forgets to set lineups or leave guys in the IR in their starting lineup type garbage. We figured that for the integrity of the league, this would be a way to keep it fresh and hungry, and owners cycling through the league, that it would be a great, would generate a lot of activity anyway. Well, it really created a stir in the second year of our league when a guy made a lot of bad trades, was kind of punting on the future. He was the first guy booted and was pissed, and it's guys we all knew. It's, guys we've known for 15, 20 years, and this is not a good rule for home leagues, because everybody got pissed off. He was the odd man out by 1.6 points, and he was somebody that's been in a lot of leagues by us too. But it's, hey man, we all kind of talked about it at the draft, like, hey, this is just in case someone stops being interested, or something. It's not to hurt anybody's feelings or anything like that, but it's we're gonna try and get somebody. I have a pretty deep Rolodex as far as people who want to join dynasty leagues or take over orphans. So I had no problem replacing guys if something goes wrong. But so this was a situation where a guy got booted, and he was one of our good friends, and he's like, "This is bullshit. I was planning on the future of being in this league, but he wasn't at the draft last year, so he didn't hear this rule go into effect, and it wasn't. I actually forgot to write it in the as a red mark on the rule book, but it's one of 2 rules that we voted on the rule book that I forgot to put in that league in the rules itself when they're posted to the site. But it was a rule that we all talked about and approved at the rookie draft, and this guy was absolutely livid. And everybody was like, we're really going to throw him out. I'm like, well, we talked about it and voted on it, so we'll have to wait till this rules meeting this year to reverse it or say whatever or keep it in play. I mean, obviously it hurts some guys' feelings, but especially when you lose by 1.6 points and you're booted from the league that you were kind of that you trade a lot of good players for future draft picks and planning on rebuilding. But it is what it is. So
yeah,
that was a bad one.
that sounds messy for sure. I mean, at the end of it, it's just like being a commission isn't always easy, so you got to enforce those things and figure out the best way to to handle tough situations like that. A lot of times leagues, once everything's set, they kind of run itself type of thing. You just make sure it doesn't go off the rails, but there are those situations that come up. Yeah, that's definitely, there's like the punishments and stuff. You always hear people. A buddy of mine, apparently he was in another league this weekend, or he was in another league, and then this weekend he had to take a Greyhound bus across the country because he finished last. like that type of stuff. But just to kick the guy out, I mean, that's pretty intense. You got people battling to stay out of that last place, I guess. So, mine one thing. This was something similar to that, I guess, like something that was happening in our leagues. And this is commish. I got another strategy thing here, but I have a few home leagues that we meet for the draft every year. And like a lot of these leagues started where like, hey, we are already in a bunch of these online leagues, right? Like let's get something together, right? We're all playing fantasy in all these other places. Let's put us all in one spot. Let's draft in person. But this is now year 12 of one of those leagues as an example. So like people are busy and it's hard to set dates, but like over the last few years, we've gotten better at like, hey, this is the date. Like we pick it in like April. We're like, all right, and this is a keeper league. So like in August, this is the date. You got to be there. And then with COVID, it kind of got a little lax on like, you could draft from online and all that. Well, so that was a bad decision that I know that we won't be doing anymore. We've already actually corrected this for next year. So like, if you're looking for a way around that, we found some middle ground. So like what we did in our league was, if you, the original rule was proposed, if you're not at the draft, you're out of the league, which, personally I was like, hey, you should be committed being here. But if you're looking for some middle ground on there, where we landed was if you cannot be at the draft, you have to send a proxy. So we were no longer going to let people draft online. Like you can have your person in there and like you can deal with them, but that's your representative now. And we're not letting you do it from online. I believe, John, actually you were sticker bitch ever that won that draft. And you were like, where are these guys? And I was like, they said, one knew he wasn't going to be there. One was last minute cancellation. And when they know they can just fall back on like, oh, I'm just going to do it from my phone at home. It's like, that's not the spirit of this thing.
Right.
So we put an end to that. And it was something that was, I think, fair, like, hey, if you can't be there, we're not going to boot you, but you send somebody to take care, you handle your business for you now and not put it on everybody else to try to text you like, oh, here's the last 6 picks. And then, they're picking some guy that was already taken 3 rounds ago because they're not there. So,
we've been through all those phone conversations with people who are across country on their family vacation and all that crap, And then we're like 1 year, it was an absolute guy. His proxy was sick. He couldn't show up. And everything was. We're like, okay, well, here's a story. You have 2 minutes. We're going to text you, and whether or not you get the text or whether or not what's going on, you have 2 minutes, and whoever you get is the first person available. I know 1 year was OJ McDuffie. He broke his leg like a day before the draft started, and it doesn't matter. I don't care if the guy died or if he's out of the league or got arrested or what. You're getting whoever's first up. It doesn't matter. If it's Emmitt Smith, you have to retire. Great, that's great. You're getting Emmitt Smith. He's retired. Good for you.
Hey, yeah, you gotta have that as those deterrents. So I'm with that. So that was something that was not good. We had some people that were pretty frustrated about that at the draft this year because they've hey, I was not here that year and I sent somebody and this guy's not here because we're kind of letting it lax. And as a commission, I was like, you know what? Yeah, the spirit of this was we draft in person. So how can we make that work? So it was a tough conversation for a little bit, but now that it's figured out, everybody knows and we're better off for it. So that was definitely a bad start a little bit to 2021, but we made some adjustments there. So anything else that didn't work out for you this year you might want to change it up going forward?
This is so it's not so much commission orientated, but on a personal level in the leagues that I commission, I'm very afraid of league kind of being boring or getting stagnant. So I sometimes lose trades on purpose just to make sure there's some activity that sparks, to possibly ignite the league to either create more trading or I feel like, I have to create activity in these leagues, but it's come at the expense of some of my teams, last couple of years. And, it is what it is. I start a bunch of leagues. I got a bunch of new startups, as you know, and this year going forward, I'm going to start focusing on my team and not just worried about the league itself and everybody else enjoying themselves. I'm still making plenty of trades, but I'll make sure that I'm not on a losing end. That I'm not just in terms of settling or losing. I'm going to feel good about the trades that I make now, and I've gotten lucky on some of the trades that I've made. But I guess there's always that. Like I get lucky because some of the trades that you think are, "Oh, I'm going to take a chance," and the guy pans out. But some of the best trades are the ones that that never went through. In my mind, sometimes I can't remember how many times I've offered something and the guy's like, "No way, this is BS," or they deny the trade, laugh at you, and then 2 weeks later the guy gets hurt, and you're like, this
Yep.
is great. It worked out great for me. So everyone has made that Godfather trade that absolutely blew up in their face because their play didn't pan out. Like, Jeff Blake a couple of years ago was I'm dating myself a little bit, but an injury happened and a player that never, came back, David Johnson, or the year after Eddie Lacy was great. People, were drooling all over him, you
Mhm.
know, or the team that just the player ended up with just sucked. Trevor Lawrence this year. I traded I traded two first, 2 seconds, and Mike Evans to get Trevor Lawrence in a super flex league. And that really didn't work out. But
Not yet.
I have Mahomes and I have Josh Allen as my first two quarterbacks. So I'm okay. I can wait on him. But
Oh,
yeah,
yep.
Trevor Lawrence isn't going anywhere. For what I paid for him, he's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't care if he sucks for the next 3 years. He's gonna be sit there and suck. It is what it
Yeah.
is. So but
Yeah.
this is on a personal level. I'm not just going to make trades to make the league more entertaining for everybody else. I'm going to kind of really just key on myself, my team, and just try to, not worry about everybody else's entertainment, worry about my team for a little bit now.
Yeah, and I think and you definitely see it. I mean, I'm in leagues like when there's a trade that hits, all of a sudden, all those like little notification, but like everyone, wants
Yeah,
to see out what it was, and that gets talking and all that. So yeah, I mean, sometimes there is that like I know I've even done it. We're like, we get. I feel like if I make this, it's gonna so and so is gonna be pissed because they offer for that same guy, and I said no, or
right.
this is just gonna get people like talking a little bit, and yeah, I think you gotta protect yourself there. I mean, as the commissioner, still one of the you still got to be in it to win it. So I think there's other ways you can do that. So we'll get you hooked up on for some video recaps, and that'll take the place of that. That'll fill the entertainment void.
All right.
For me, the last thing I had for the bad this year, one thing I'm probably just done doing is this is a strategy thing, but like in redraft leagues, I'm not streaming tight ends like anymore on purpose. Like I looked at a lot of my teams this year that were successful, and I had even though they had their ups and downs as pretty much every player did, it felt like this year. But like I had Waller or Kittle or Kelsey or Andrews. I didn't have any Pitts, but he turned out fine. For you, all the teams where I was like, oh, I'll just find somebody. Unless it was Schultz or Knox, there were those guys you could find them, but like I didn't hit on any of those guys, and I
Right.
was just recycling the same damn people, Dan Arnold and Gerald Everett every week, and okay, Conklin now, and God, it was horrendous. And when you looked at it, I did take a peek at the ADP. Obviously, this fluctuated, but of the top 6 tight ends from last year, what was it? So the top 5 tight ends in ADP all finished top 6 in points per game.
Yeah.
So I mean, you pretty much, it sucked that Waller wasn't there for you, and maybe Pitts wasn't the all-star yet out of the gate, but he finished top 6 in points per game, and you drafted him there. So I'm going to put a little bit more emphasis in redraft leagues or keeper leagues to just make sure, even more than last year. Like I want a tight end. I want to get one of those higher end guys. I don't even this year, like it didn't really work out for Hawkinson, right? So I'm gonna try to not stream tight ends on purpose. You can still get away with it at quarterback, as we saw, like the guys you could pick up late in the year in keeper redraft leagues. You could ride with those guys, and they weren't so bad. But I mean, I look at ADPs at every position, and there was nothing like how predictable tight end was in a sense. So
I think in every tight end premium league that I have now, I don't have a league without a Waller. I'm a Waller, without a Hawkinson or Gesicki or both of them possibly on the same team, because I want to be even in my flex position. I don't want to have. I've been through so many years of having shitty tight ends, like you just said. Oh, I'm gonna, and on top of that, you lose your waiver priority, and sometimes, if you're spending all your fab budget, on signing some crap tight end just to fill somebody, and then he ends up getting like 1.7 points or something like that from
yes,
he caught a ball and fell over, and it's like, great, this is awesome. I spent
yeah.
$35 of my $100 fan budget on a guy that fell over one time after he caught a ball and he can't do anything. It's just crap.
Yeah, it's and there is that, I think, too, like because the way I usually treat the quarterback position, like I'm trying to focus on finding some guys there. So like when I'm trying to find a tight end on top of that, it's kind of like sometimes it can get a little disheartening when you look at your roster, like, okay, yeah, I have the receivers and running backs here, but like I literally am just flushing through these other 2 positions constantly. And I think it just tight end, I think it's just shown, especially over the last few years, like, man, if you can avoid it, I'm trying to avoid it. It is what it is. Like if they all get taken the first 2 rounds, like, yeah, okay, I guess I'm streaming. Like you gotta be flexible. But I mean, if I have the opportunity to take, like, I think Darren Waller is going to be pretty discounted next year for what
Yes.
he could be. Like, I'm going to scoop him up and feel like I got a pretty solid starter there as opposed to waiting it out.
Unfortunately, like, yeah, some of the super flex leagues, it's almost like you have to start out quarterback, and then go tight end. And I
Yeah.
mean, and then you receivers, they come and go. They, there's some guys boom, some guys bust, but you cannot. The quarterbacks and tight ends, and especially in the tight end premium or super flex leagues, are the three most important spots in your roster.
Hmm.
Running backs, I mean, what, 2-3 years out of those guys, and that's it. I mean, the running backs don't really matter anymore. I was always a guy who drooled over running backs all the time. Like, oh, I need to have 15 running backs or 5 running backs, or it's matchup dependent sometimes. It all depends on, especially now with almost every team's going to a running back by committee situation right now, and even the guys that are not. I mean, Zeke was up until this year. Zeke was going to be somebody that everybody coveted Zeke this year, and the guys like Zeke are falling out, and guys like Joe Mixon, who everybody was kind of shitting all over last year. Now he turned out good this year, but he always gets hurt. He had one good year. What do you
Hmm.
expect from Joe Mixon next year?
Right. Yeah. I think it's, and I mean, hell, that startup that we did this summer, that you were, that the league we alluded to earlier, you finished second just barely. But you left that draft with what? No running backs. Like, you know, like, and it
I
was almost a joke. We were trying to boycott trading with you because, we didn't want you to get a running back, and you found some bodies, but ultimately, I mean, your team is still good to go, and you could find people. And I know of leagues I'm in where I was starting Alex Collins, one week or whatever,
right.
off the freaking street, and Rex Burkhead, and just like, it's just yeah, the game is definitely a little bit different there, and those tight end premium leagues especially, I think what you said as far as being those quarterbacks and that tight end, that's value right there. There's a lot there, and a little bit of shift in strategy, I think. So.
Mhm.
All right, let's get into the new. So some resolutions. So obviously the new year's here. We're not talking about dieting or exercising as you put it on Twitter. I appreciate that. But just some things that, like, what, I haven't tried this before. I want to give this a shot. So just some of the new things that we'd like to try for 2022 and beyond, because obviously probably a lot of people can relate. Like, I know I have a lot of leagues where we're already chatting about, what we want to change, or when's this happening, or what's this deadline to to clear your IR or what have you. So one thing I will note before and I'll kick it to you for your first one, John, is one thing I did in my leagues this off season. I did it last year too. Is I posted as the season ended, I posted I created a Google form. So in essence, just a place where people can submit any rule changes they want to propose. If you don't have like a formal meeting, like annual rules meeting or anything like that, this is a great alternative to that, to kind of store those suggestions. So I just call it a suggestion box. They can throw things in there. We'll vote on it later. And that way I don't need to keep track of it because it's stored over there, and it's fresh in everybody's mind. Like, the season just ended, so they could remember, like, oh, I didn't like that part of the league. Or like last year we had a league where the scoring was screwed up, where, like, for whatever reason, receiving yards weren't counted on decimals, but rushing yards were.
Yeah.
It was just a mistake, but like, everyone forgot. No one like did anything to record it, and like the season started, and like 5 weeks in, someone noticed it, and we're like, damn it, So like stuff like that. So I'd highly
Right.
suggest like something like that to keep track of these new types of things. But let's kick it to you, John. What was something, either strategy, commish idea, that you want to give a try heading into 2022?
I have to ask real fast. What
Yeah.
were the worst comments in your suggestion box? Because I can
Oh,
only
I
imagine.
definitely get, so yeah. So that people definitely take advantage of it, and like, I put in there, like, I want to know your team name or your name, so that if I have a question about it, I can come ask you. So
All right.
people put all like Mike Crotch in there, and or whatever, and like, there's always one asshole in this one league I'm in. His suggestion is get a new commissioner for the league. So you always get those fun things in there. Like, so
Can
I
only
always do
imagine.
laugh at those. But I'm glad your mind went to the same place, because
Oh,
it definitely happened. Like, every league, there's always at least one, wiseacre in there.
that's what
As
the
my
message board is for, so everybody can see that this guy's being an asshole. I don't, I don't,
right.
I don't, I don't want to have all the, everything on my every day. Look at, I got 15 messages from the same people, like, oh, you get a new commissioner, you suck, or jump off a bridge or something.
Yeah.
You're gonna
That's
love my
funny.
first one.
Let's do it.
Yeah, it's scoring. Scoring will always
Oh.
be something that will be a liquid. That will be liquid for me. As a guy who started out in terrible leagues that only, we only had passing, rushing, receiving touchdowns, field goals, defensive safeties and touchdowns. And the scoring will, the more the merrier, as far in every league as going forward as I'm concerned. As far as I'm concerned, the more the merrier in every league. As a matter of fact, I wish Sleeper would add more scoring options like 500 and 600 yard passing yards, because they're going to happen. One day. It's you just saw Jamar Chase had huge game. Like they're going to have, there's going to be a 300-yard receiving or rushing game or receiving game. I want the points. I want points for rushing attempts, first downs, targets, trips to the bathroom, times they call their mom. You name it. I want that. I want scoring. I want the points to be out of control. I want return yards. I want return yard touchdowns. I don't want kickers. I don't want defenses, but I do want points for accomplishments. I think people should get points for a first down, because guys who, the Nick Chubbs who don't catch a lot of passes, they do get 8 or 9 first downs, and that keeps drives alive. That keeps drives alive in real football games. I want things that matter in the NFL to matter a lot in fantasy too. It's supposed to, kind of reflect what's going on in the field. And I just listened to Joe PSP and Scott, our league mate Scott Sidlow, on their last Junkies Dynasty Junkies podcast, and PSP is like, tight end premium is garbage. It's terrible. It does in the NFL. The guy doesn't get 1.75 yards for every time he catches the ball. Why should it happen in fantasy? It just tries to make the positions relevant, so that not only the first four guys are, or the first four guys make them so much more relevant. So they're as much worth as much as the top receivers or the top running backs. They are so, everybody has totally different outlooks on everything, but I love scoring. I love scoring. The more the merrier. I know you call it the devil's scoring or whatever, whatever you say, but PPR is phenomenal. What came around. I like having it where the receivers get, the perfect league would be the receivers get a half point per catch, the running backs get a full point per catch, and the tight ends get 1.75 per catch. That would be a great, I guess, base point for someone looking for a scoring system. That way, because receivers, that's all they do is receive. They should be catching the ball. And you should take points away for drops. You should take, you just like missing field goals, or, if you got a guy who drops the ball a lot or a guy that fumbles a lot, fumbles should be a big, significant part of, like, it ruins an NFL football game. It should ruin your fantasy score too. So, the more points the merrier, but you should also be penalized for things you do on the field that are counterproductive to your team.
I loved your you want them to score points for trips to the bathroom. So I was like, oh, he must own Lamar in that league. Yeah, I will be honest with this. I would joke around. If you've been listening to me for a very long time, I used to be like standard scoring, non PPR, dying on that hill. And one time I tried to start a hashtag standard scoring squad. That didn't take off like I hoped it would. And while I definitely myself, I know when I want to take a look at this offseason, and I'm going to do my homework and bring it back here for you guys, is like, we're so far removed from the years of the 300 carry running back, right? Like, right. I just feel like PPR by itself is not a good representation of our game anymore. I love points for first down. I love that. I love the tier. I love the position specific PPR that you kind of mentioned. That's interesting to me. I'd love to dig into that more. But ultimately, at the end of the day, for me, I play in so many leagues too. Like, I like to have leagues with different scoring. I'm not in one league that's the same as the other. They're all different, and I'm in 20 leagues. Like, they all have some sort of little caveat, whether it be a roster difference or scoring difference. The draft is different, how it's handled, whatever. So it was funny in the league that you got me in the summer. I was the 12th guy. You needed somebody, and you knew this. You knew a donkey guy that would want in on your league. So I show up, right. I'm in the draft. You put me in sleeper, and I take a look at the scoring, and I was like, "Yep, you guys let John get a hold of this, because this stuff is out of control." With all the little bonuses and all that stuff. But hey, it makes it interesting. I mean, I think when you have a player that has a significant NFL game, he has a very significant score to go along with that versus, I think, what was it? Well, this is salt in the wound.
Austin Eckler had great weeks. Derrick Henry.
I was going to say Amon-Ra St. Brown last week.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it.
But I mean, no, there were definitely times where, I do think there's a difference. If you put up 120 yards and a touchdown like that, or let's just say 120 yards, I do feel like that's worth more. That should be worth more than twice of 60, right? It just feels like it just feels more more relevant. So there's ways to do that. I have things I like and don't like, but I'm not surprised that was your first one.
I
So.
like giving points for like a 20-yard reception, and like it should be like 1 point for a 20-yard reception. 1.2 points for a 30-yard reception, 1.5 points for a 40-yard reception. And then if it turns out being a longer touchdown, same thing. It's not easy to score a 70-yard touchdown. It's not easy to return a kick. It's not easy to have return yards. Most guys get 2 or 3 return yards or 4 or 5 return yards. So you get every team has a returner, like CeeDee Lamb, or like Braxton Berrios. That saved my butt by returning a touchdown 2 weeks ago. I'm going to buy a Braxton Berrios jersey and hang it in Nick Scripps' garage. I already told him, because if you want me to league, but but return yards are huge, especially for guys who are good. Do you remember the days of Antonio Brown on the Steelers when he was a return man? He's a kick returner, punt returner, and a receiver. Not only being the best receiver in the league, he'd also return a touchdown or a punt once every 2 weeks or so. And it was having him on your team was like having a gold mine.
Mike's still in the chat. You said we have raids on taxi squads. That's something I haven't tried before. But I have leagues that I have heard of other leagues that kind of do that. So that's always interesting. So you can.
We have that in some of the leagues, and
how's it work?
It's okay, but you have to make rules for that, because it just, some people are just to be jerks. They'll be like, all right, I'm gonna put I want to take up let's just say you have somebody, if you have Trey Sermon on your taxi squad right now. So like, I'll take Trey Sermon right now. I want to do, well, that's fine, but you have to pay a second round pick, or whatever you drafted him plus. So I think what happens is you have to have whatever. So if Trey Sermon was drafted in the first round, like most, he was drafted like 112, 202, something like that. If that was the case, then you have to pay a first round pick for him if you're going to take him off somebody's taxi squad. It's got to be compensated, because otherwise people are just doing it to be jerks. Like, I want him, I want him, I want him. Their team sucks. They're going to try and raid everybody else's taxi squad to try and get lucky. Well, it has to be a penalty for it. It can't be just as easy as somebody just bored, raiding everybody else's taxi squad. So you have to put a lot of rules in place for that, or else it gets kind of shitty for guys who do have a pretty good taxi squad.
Yeah, I was in a league where and maybe I didn't understand it all the way, but the way that it was presented was like, okay, you can do this if somebody's on your taxi, so another team could put a claim in for him, and then you could either promote him to your team, or you just gave him away. And I'm like, well, then couldn't you just go around and be like, I want that guy? And then it's like, oh, okay, no, I put it, and then eventually all the taxis are just empty.
Yeah.
So,
So that's why if you claim him, you have to give back. You have to compensate the owner for taking him. So, yeah.
I like that. Mike also had another comment in here, and so I want to touch on this before I move to my first one. But how do you feel about points per first down? Just to expand on that for a moment. For me, I love it. It not only does it satisfies the the John McGlynn and all of us that wants to see more points, but it's a fantasy thing that is truly added value to the NFL game, right? Like, if you get a 2-yard run on 2nd and 8, who cares, right? But if you get a 2-yard run on 3rd and 1, that should, that's a first down. That keeps that drive alive for that team. That should matter. I know Sleeper, you definitely can do points for first down.
Yes.
It's awesome. I don't think on a lot of the other major platforms like Yahoo. I was a commissioner of not this year, but other years on that, and you couldn't do it. So maybe they've added it. They should, because I think points for first down is a great way to balance a little bit the fact that you had to add PPR in theory because of the running backs that were just workhorse crazy, right? But now you kind of have these split backfields, and like you said, like Nick Chubb's of the world, like they should be given that little extra because they're out there getting those hard yards, I feel like. So
I'm gonna give it the Nick. What I like to do is it should be 0.1 points per carry. So every 10 carries is 1 point. And then on top of that, first downs is a full point, because it like I said, it is, carries are huge when you get the Derrick Henrys or the Nick Chubbs who don't, it's not Michael Carter. It's not, it's not guys out of the backfield who are just catching 7 or 8 passes, for 4 yards at a time and racking up PPR points. It makes it fair for the running backs to just get a lot of carries instead of out of the backfield catches.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I'd highly recommend it if you guys haven't given that a shot. That's by far, I think it's been like 3 years since Scott Fish added that as in the fishbowl. And like, I remember when that kind of happened, everyone was like, oh, that not a lot of people, that was their introduction to it was for me. And honestly, maybe it was 4 years ago, whatever. ever since then, that's kind of always been like my number one thing. If anyone asks me like, what's something that is not like just, standard or whatever to fantasy football at its lowest level, right? What would you add? And I was like, points or first down every time, if you're just, even for the most casual leagues, that's fun. It makes it fun to watch the game and be like, I got that point or whatever because of that first down. That's fun. So, but speaking of that, my first New Year's resolution for 2022 is, and this isn't like groundbreaking, obviously everybody's had thought of everything at this point. So, but for me personally, I put in my notes, I put F dem RBs. I'm done with running backs, dude. I hate them so much. This year I was burned like many people and it's been this way for the last few years. I do feel like that for me, I'm either going to go two routes. I'm going to go, not to be obnoxious and just do it for the point of doing it, but I'm going to go 0 RB and just take the value that comes to me. Or the alternative to that for me is an anchor. If I have the ability to get one of those we'll see where it ends up, but probably 5, maybe 6 running backs in that first round that can just be the anchor to my running back slot. And then my RB2 is just a constant cycle of whoever the hell is relevant that week. I'm doing that. My most successful leagues this year were not driven by, and last year as well, were not driven by, I really hit on all these running backs. Yes, you can win anyway, but consistently I've seen over the last few years is that you just have to, without putting too much into it for today, because we're just kind of being a little bit more higher level, but I'm done. F the running backs, man. I'm not investing in this, whether it's dynasty, redraft, whatever. You can find these guys. You had plenty of options late in drafts and off the wire. That it just makes a lot of sense that I'd rather spend those first 4 or 5 picks on players that receiver possession, tight end. No, I'm going to they're locked and loaded there, and anchor running back if I can, and then just use up most of my bench for just flyers. And eventually multiple of those guys are going to hit. And I had a league that I didn't go into the draft wanting to do this, but everyone was taking the running back. So I just said, forget it. I didn't take a running back till round 8. By week 8 or 9, I had more running backs on my team than I knew what to do with. Like, and not studs, but guys to start, like where I was like, oh shoot, it wasn't as easy. Like the first couple weeks, I'm like, these guys have pulses, they're in. Right. And after a while, I was like, oh man, I actually have a few options here that I actually have to make a decision on now. So I will, I have the right to change my opinion, I guess. But over the last few years, I just really feel coming out of this, I'm like, man, you know what? I'm just not doing it. You can live and die by that, but I just feel like that's not necessarily the way I'm going to play going forward. So
I think in the draft I had last year, my first running back in round 13 was Ramondre Stevenson,
Yes.
And I'm like, that's pretty good value for a guy. I liked him a lot, but a lot of people didn't really, so they figured as a Patriot, I was going to take a chance on him, and it ended up paying out in a couple weeks this year when I was able to play him. And I think he is a pretty good running back for the future. But my New Year's resolution, I think, will be, I'm going to call it the Jaylen Camp rule, because I draft these guys in the 5th round, and I'm like, I'm going to keep this guy on my team until he pans out, and 2.5 years later, Jaylen Camp's not even, he's going from a team on a practice squad and something else. And I'm like, I like this guy. He's a physical freak. He's huge. He's on a bad team in college, so he didn't really produce. I'm going to try and make this happen. Now there's Nico Collins, and there's guys like, Donovan Peoples-Jones who are, don't have great stats, but they have some. They were 5-star recruits coming out of high school. Jaylen Camp really wasn't much, but I just figured that this is going to be somebody who's going to pan out. There's tons of receivers in the NFL. He'll end up being somewhere. So I mean, literally, I just got rid of that guy like a couple weeks ago in some leagues, and I'm like, people they're like, Jaylen Camp, who the hell is that guy? It's guys, it's guys that I like that they're roster cloggers. I'm going to get rid. For the most part, I'm just going to get rid of all the roster cloggers in my league that I think are going to pan out, but I'm the only person in the world that plays fantasy football that thinks this guy's going to pan out. So that's my number one resolution.
Yeah. And then just to kind of even spin off that and kind of almost combine the last 2 points, like, I think if you're gonna hold those guys, if you're gonna just, where it's literally just like, man, like the all luck would have to go my way for that guy to turn in anything. Spend those on running backs. Yes. Like as much as I'm not investing in the running backs early on, like use all your bench spots to take those flyers. Take those late round picks. Grab a running back. Right. Look at the mid round or the like 3rd, 4th, 5th round wide receivers in rookie drafts this last year. Did any of those guys turn into anything? Like, no, then maybe they could, but like Not really. And then you look at the running back position, again, not all of them do, but you have Elijah Mitchell. Stevenson was another later round guy that I know was going. I picked him up in some third rounds. And it was like, those are the kind of guys you just want to, plug those guys away. So use it on the running backs. I've been I don't know, maybe it's a little bit more higher profile than your example, but like mine was Andy Isabella. Like I can't count how many teams I cut Andy
Yes.
Isabella off of this year. Like, and I'm just like, that was a complete waste of my time, So,
Yeah. I
I
have.
mean,
I mean, this is. I was at, like I said, I'm in a championship in a dynasty league, and this is my running back core. I have Ronald Jones and Dario Agumbawale, and then I have Javonte Williams, which hopefully he'll end up being something next year. But
yeah,
other than that, I have Ramondre Stevenson, Kenny Gainwell, Keyshawn Vaughn, DJ Dallas, Eno Benjamin, Larry Roundtree, Kenny Ngagwe. Like most of those people, nobody has those guys. Some of them nobody has on their team, but
yeah,
Kylan Hill, Darrington Evans, like
yeah.
those are terrible. But so,
Yeah, yep.
but I went to the championship with no running back. So I mean,
Yeah.
everybody's like, you have to have. I don't have any Nick Chubbs. I don't have any Austin Ecklers. I don't have like
Mhm.
the top. I don't have Jonathan Taylor. I don't have anybody good on my team. My team's terrible.
Yeah.
Minus crossing my fingers that Javonte Williams will pan out next year. I don't have anybody
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah. It's I think it's just the way the committees, it's just so evident to me that, man, it's just like this isn't going away. And so when you get those ultimate bell cows, I get it, for sure. They could definitely lead you. And if you're in a redraft league and you got a first 6 picks, it's probably gonna be running backs. But for me, that number is shrinking. I'm not looking to get that guy at the tail back end of the first anymore. Forget it. I'm just go with I'll go with top tight end and a receiver or two receivers, and I'll figure it out later. I'll use my last 8 picks on running backs and just recycle those guys, but I don't need to worry about it at the top. Compared to if I
Nope.
go with running backs, I know I'm going to be looking for some
It,
filling in.
unless they fall in your lap somewhere,
Yeah,
or everybody else doesn't like the Joe Mixons of the world that nobody wanted to see anymore. He just kind of fell in your lap, like, that kind of stuff.
yep,
Stay away from them. Yeah.
yeah. My the second thing I had. So first one was F them running backs. But this one was actually kind of, and it's kind of bringing it full circle. But for me, I put my commish hat on for this one. And for me was the divisions. Using divisions, I think, was something that I, again, didn't like in the past because it didn't have any real meaning to it. It was just, oh, we're split up into 2 groups of 6 because that's what the site did when we all signed in. Like, who gives a shit about that? But I think there's fun ways to do it. Drafting your divisions, setting the schedule up where you play your division mates and it meaning something. You can name your divisions. Like, when we did that draft, like not only did you get to draft your division mates, if you were at the top last year, you got to name the division. So, certain people knew that certain people didn't want things to be named to that. So they're like, I'm
Yeah.
naming it that. But one thing that I did in the couple leagues I implemented it this last year, and I will do going forward, I'm really going to push for is and the few positives of it is you draft the division, you can name it. I like the payouts for the division winner. Is kind of a nice way. I think I'm going to get away from, like, I have a lot of leagues where, like, oh, you had the highest score of the week, here's $5.
Yeah.
I think I'd rather be like, hey, here's your, you get your buy-in back or whatever, like, for winning the division. That's kind of cool. But what we did in our division, in our leagues, were so this is maybe a little bit more simplified than how John had it, only because John had already established division. So I'm coming at it a little fresh. 14 games. If you do 3 divisions of 4 teams apiece in a 12-team league, that actually works out really, really nice because you play your outside division teams. That's 8, and then you play your own division mates twice. So
Hmm.
there's your 6 games, and there's 14. So
Hmm.
if you've been kind of hesitant on, like, trying to figure out how to get divisions to work too, I know for me that was something that we just used because we had the 14 game schedule. So 3 divisions at 4 apiece, and then you play your own division mates twice, and then you play everybody else once. Clean cut. Everyone's schedule's the same, so it's really nice. So
A lot of people
I
did
use
that.
that.
I'm kind of old fashioned, and a lot of people don't want to
Yep.
put a lot of people don't want to put the same amount of work in that I put
Yes.
in for this kind of stuff too. They're like, oh, it's the easy way out. It's a little bit more work for me. I think it's fun. When I get in too many leagues, which I don't think that'll ever happen, but when I run too many leagues, I'll stop doing all this stuff. But
Yeah.
it's fun. I have a lot of time on my hands. I have a great schedule for work and stuff like that. So I can do this stuff when I
Yeah.
get when I I'm in a situation where I don't have my kid. A lot of people have young kids right now. My youngest kid is already almost 17 years old, and I have a 25-year-old. So all my time before, when I was coaching and running around and changing diapers and dropping off babysitters and that kind of stuff, those days are already gone for me. Most people are just kind of most people. I'm talking to people in the fans football community, and they're like, "Yeah, it's great. I just had my 21st birthday yesterday," and I'm like, I'm like,
Hey,
what the hell, man?
Hey, I know I definitely appreciate, and I know that people, listeners out there too, like with those leagues, you have good commissioners that put that time in and that extra effort. Like it definitely doesn't go unnoticed. And not only I've enjoyed that about the leagues I'm in with you, but like I'm like just sitting there as a commissioner of other leagues. I'm like, that's a great idea. I'm stealing that one. It's like, oh, how did you
Yeah.
do that? Like, how did you get that all play to work? Okay, good, noted. So
Being in the fishbowl in the European fans football contest and the Irish what's it called? The Irish something, league. I was in so many leagues and there's so many different you have to expand. You got to try different leagues, see what people have. If a league is something that if you join a league, I always say like do a if you're going to join a dynasty league, what you should do is do a practice league first. Like do a redraft league with all the rules. You can trade future draft picks, whatever. It's a redraft league, nobody cares. But make sure everybody likes the site. When I first switched from ESPN to Sleeper, people hated it. Like, this is crap. ESPN's fine. Now you can see the difference between ESPN and Sleeper. And I even tried to go to MFL one year with my league, and that didn't happen at all. That was that went over like a snowball in hell. That was terrible. So
yeah.
it's but you gotta all these things, everything I think the tight end premium, and when I brought in Superflex to my leagues, people were like, Superflex, you're just getting stupid with these stupid rules, that now it's kind of the norm, like
Yep. Yeah.
so
I mean,
yeah.
it's funny how things change. I mean, like I said, as much as I was like gung ho about, not even, even non PPR, standard scoring, God scoring, and that's the way it's meant to be. Things you change, once you get to, you try different things out. I find, there's still things you find like, I don't know if I'd like that. It's like, yeah, I didn't like that, but like, there's other things that you got to try out to see how you like it. So,
Right.
a lot of good takeaways there, especially this time of year. Can kind of reflect back. So, you got anything else? Any other resolutions?
Last one real fast, just
Yep.
an Empire League. If people are familiar with an Empire League rule, it's just you know if a team is really smoking everyone and there's no end in sight to this, their dominance, their starting lineup is great. Their bench is crazy with all young players because they just kind of either took advantage of people or just really stacked their team or just that much better than everybody else in the league. Yeah, it only makes it fair just to start over again and reshuffle the cards kind of deal. I've asked about Empire rule where if somebody wins 3 years in a row, the league will start over, and that's just kind of if somebody wins 3 years in a row, that means people are just kind of they're donating their money at that point in time, and especially if after 3 years in a row, you still see this guy. We had the buy in the first round, smoked everybody the whole way through. Sometimes luck is one thing, but another thing is when somebody just isn't like why I do my leagues. I draft the 25 players the first round in round, the second year, and then possibly talk about expansion after that with maybe a taxi squad or just maybe make it 32 or 35 players. Because if you have year one, when you have, let's say, 30, you draft 30 players and a taxi squad all in the first year. If somebody kills that draft, that could be like 5 years in a row where this guy's just nobody's going to touch him because he, drafted well. And you guys all know how it is, like a redraft sometimes. Somebody's like, oh my God, this guy, he just, right from the get go, he's going to smoke the whole league, and he does.
Yeah.
It's not fair in a dynasty league just to kind of, oh, this is great. I'm playing against Joe again, and he's got, the entire NFL All Pro team on his. There's no end in sight. So an Empire League after 2 years, or 2 years, I'm not sure, but a third year where somebody wins 3 years in a row and they're still got a good team, put that in your rules somewhere too, where if it happens like that, you can start over again.
Yeah, it's definitely. I know it's one of those just kind of consequences of the game type of thing, and sometimes that does happen. I know I'm in a league, and if he's listening to this, he knows who he is. Just kicks our ass every year, and this year he lost one game. Maybe lucked out with his championship matchup, playing a different opponent than we thought he might have played, but he won it again, right? And he just so. Yeah, I think there's things like that, whether it be that or dispersal, like coming up with like dispersals, you know, things to try to keep it fresh. Cause I think the one thing that can eventually, if you don't do something, then people just like, you know what, I'm done giving my money to, Joe over here. So I'm out of here. And, but I think the one thing that you did that was really, you mentioned it. So I want to highlight it though, is in the leagues that I was in with you, you did start off with just not small, but a little smaller roster the first year. I think it was 25, where like everyone kind of got their feet under them a bit, and then that kind of helped because like you said, as far as like, it wasn't like just a test run, but it didn't absolutely kill you if you were like, whoa, I was way off there. Like, oh, I didn't anticipate that. And it helps too. Like if you have somebody that's not as experienced in Dynasty, I think one thing we should all try to do is get more people to play this way. So like if you make it so not that they're, not that there's training wheels, but it gives them some ability to learn while they do it and not just completely get killed. That helps. So, that's I think that's a great thing that we should all take a look at and evaluate, because this is the time of year to do it, as it's a little bit slower as far as, once we get into approaching towards the draft, things are just going to get nuts, and we're off and running again. So it's going to be a good year. I'm looking forward to 2022. So John, appreciate it, man. One last time, where can people find your stuff and where can they find you?
Well, not many people find me because I don't have much interaction on the Twitter machine. But if they want to, they could find me on. Nick Script lets me use his channel on the P2W Fantasy Network. He's got great stuff over there. I do my commission evaluation podcast on that same channel, and you can find me, John McGlynn, at John McGlynn 75 on the Twitter machine. And I pretty much just go on there and babble a lot, or try and sound smart. Sometimes when I see I hear a lot of different podcasts or what people say, I try to kind of give people credit for what they brought to the fantasy football community. But as far as content's concerned, I just try to help commissioners, try to talk to people, get you've been on my podcast before, just kind of figure out what's going on in their life, a lot of personal questions, what their hobbies are, things like that. And then we get in a evaluate a team every episode, and what they should do to rebuild or remodel, and how to figure with some possible trades that people should make to make their team better, things that we envision where their strengths and weaknesses are. So people that are maybe just got out of Dynasty or been in there for a while, maybe get a fresh opinion on their teams or what they could do. And over the last probably 8 years, I probably turned 80 or 85 people into new Dynasty managers. That's what it's all about. It's for us. If you don't like, people wouldn't be watching these shows, or they'd be watching gardening shows or motorcycle shows or something like that. They're on here for fantasy football. They listen to us because they want to learn something. If it's hopefully out of all the babbling I do, maybe somebody said, "Oh, okay," or I open somebody's eyes or open somebody's ears to some kind of concept or some kind of new thought, and that's all we're here for.
Yeah, no, I know I've taken a lot of good things away from discussions with you, whether it be or listening into the podcast and things. So definitely check that out. Hit John up if you have any questions. If you're commish questions, maybe you want to get a local league started. How can you do that? I know that I'm pretty sure I just got a DM like, hey, I noticed you say on Twitter you live near Chicago, and I was like, who's this creep? But no, I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, it's definitely, it can get tough if you don't know where to start. So if you want to get started, if you have any ideas, you want to bounce off us or see how it's worked for us, feel free as always to hit us up. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This was fun. A lot of commish talk, which I like a lot, as a commissioner myself. So, appreciate you guys tuning in. The Smackdown will be once a week. Going forward, will generally be released on Thursday morning. So we'll record live on Wednesday nights on the YouTube channel. So just make sure you're subscribed and you'll get all the notifications that you need. Next week, going to be back with a award show, wrapping up the 2021 season, but one to let it settle just a bit. So we're going to be talking about that next week. So stay subscribed into the Warzone Network. Lots of great content coming at you this entire off season. But until then, for John McGlynn, I'm Kyle August. You can follow me on Twitter at KyleMonth8. I'll catch you guys next week. I'll see you.
Later.